Hey there, I'm Tara from Wild Bird Farm. I garden here in Zone 5 in central Iowa. Today we're going to talk a little bit about setbacks and how you can protect and safeguard yourself from the worst. I've had this topic on my list of video ideas since last summer. And it's not the most exciting or happy topic, so I kind of kept putting it off. There were some things that I grew out in my cut flower rows last year that had always done very well for me, and I would have bet money that I would always have them year over year. However, last year, for several reasons, they just didn't do well. So I had this idea on my video list to talk about why I would not suggest mono growing, meaning just growing one type of flower. There are some larger as well as smaller farms that only grow, let's say, only grow dahlias, or maybe they only grow peonies. Peonies, something like that might be an exception, something perennial like that. I'm thinking more annuals. So let's say in my case, I always grew wonderful sunflowers. And then last year, something happened. We had a lot of moisture early in the season. From March through July, we had a ton of rain. And while certain plants, like the dahlias, loved that, and I had a great year with dahlias, other things like the sunflowers and the statice and the straw flower did not love it. I think it was a combination of being very wet last year as well as me getting something in the field. And I'm kicking myself now that I didn't take a sample of it. We have, the Iowa State University has an extension agency that you can send diseased plants to, or they might even send someone out to the farm to look at it and help you diagnose it. And sometimes when I am in the height of summer and super busy, I push those things off. I didn't do that last year. I knew there was something wrong. I think it might have been something that was spread by leaf hoppers. But again, since I didn't get that testing done, I won't ever know for sure. So last year, something hit the sunflowers in the majority of the patches I had. And it's kind of started from the ground and they just browned their way up. I could harvest from some. The ones that are branching that I generally grow more for U-picks and for the birds and the bees, those just looked awful and I ended up ripping them out. Same thing with the straw flowers. I think that was leaf hoppers and maybe they're encouraged by wet soil or wet conditions, I'm not sure. But I just had brown straw flower. I didn't really harvest any of them, which was really disappointing because I put an emphasis on those last year and I had a lot of plugs started. I probably had 150 or 200 plugs that I started from seed. They looked great, but then they just got something out in the field. Same thing for the statice. It just turned brown. And I think in that case, it was too much water for them. I haven't researched to see if they also will be impacted by leaf hoppers. But for them, they don't like a lot of water and they got a lot of water last year. So all that to say, I learned a lesson from last summer that I am not ever going to be comfortable growing only one main flower. So let's say I didn't do dahlias or zinnias or lilies or anything that could be a focal except sunflowers. And if I have a bad sunflower year, that's gonna tank all of my market bouquets. Same thing here with dahlias. We don't always have a great dahlia year, and I've heard others around the country and even across the pond say the same thing. Oh, it was a terrible year for dahlias. We had several years of drought before last year, and while I wouldn't say it was a terrible dahlia year, they definitely weren't producing like I expected them to. Another example of this is if I love straw flowers so much that I decided that was going to be my filler and I was going to grow hundreds of them in all colors, and that was going to be the filler flower for my market bouquets. Well, if I had a year like last year, they would have been wiped out and I would have been left with big gaps when I was trying to put together my bouquets. So a note I took away from last year for myself was I do want to narrow down what I'm growing, but I don't want to narrow down it so much that if I have a crop failure, I'm left unable to put together the bouquets that I've committed to or the number of bouquets that I want to sell. I hope that makes sense. I think most of us can probably apply that a little bit to what we're doing. So let's fast forward to last week. We're here in February. We just went through a very cold spell. So for the last 10 days, we've been in negative double-digit Fahrenheit lows. So -12, -15. With the wind chill, it felt like -25, -30. Our schools around here, even our metro schools, were delayed 2 hours the majority of the last 2 weeks. So if you've been here for a little bit, you know that I have moved some of my cold hardy, cool loving starts out into our shop area. We keep that, what I keep calling minimally heated. So we were keeping it at 50 degrees. Things like sweet peas and stock and some of the perennials that I've started like that temperature. So once I had the seeds started and they look good in the house here, I was moving them out to the shop. Well, during those really cold days, our heater in my side of the shop was not able to keep up. So for the first couple days, I went out there and was checking and it was like 45 and I thought that's fine. Nothing out here is gonna be harmed by a 45-degree Fahrenheit temperature. But then over the last 4 days, I got very busy at my 9-to-5 job and I didn't go out there for the last 3 days. I was thinking they can go 3 days without water. So I went out yesterday when I got home from work and I had a big surprise. So I went to water the seedlings and they were all pretty much dead. So what my husband and I figured out was one of these cold nights within the last 3 days that we hadn't been out there a lot, the heater just wasn't able to keep up or possibly it shut off. I know my husband was out there once and when he came in, I said, "What's the temperature?" And he said it's about 41. And while that was lower than what we had the heater set at, it was still warm enough to keep those plants alive, so I didn't think too much about it. But I think between when he saw that temperature and then we had 2 more nights very cold, either the heater shut off for a little bit, we don't think we lost power, or it just couldn't keep up. It's kind of surprising to me that it dropped all the way down, way past freezing, that these little plants froze. But I'll take you out there. There's definitely a lot of unalive plants. And that was pretty depressing because I've been babying these for about 6 weeks now. So what took the biggest hit was the stock. I had 128 cell trays of stock. I'll show you one that I have a little bit of hope for. The one that had the largest seedlings wasn't completely died back. So I watered them well yesterday and put them back under the lights. But the other trays are goners. They were completely like white tan. There was no green left on these little seedlings. And then the other thing that took the hit that really hurt my heart a little bit was my sweet peas because they were looking so good. About half of that deep cell tray were the Japanese sweet peas that I was trying for the first time. Now they don't look dead. There is a little bit of green on them, but since I've grown sweet peas several years and I put them outside and watched them struggle, they looked a lot like this the year that I planted out a bunch of them and the wind just hammered on them and it's just like all the moisture gets sucked out of them or something and most of the leaves turn brown and papery. That's what these look like. So I'm not extremely hopeful. I did put those back under the lights after giving them a good watering and we'll see how they look today. Maybe I'll tell you they look better, but they did not look very good yesterday. So that's kind of a bummer. Moving forward, Last week, I decided, you know what, I've got a few more scented stock seeds. I'm just gonna get them planted. So I had another 128 cell tray that I planted. It's back in my grow room. I'm just starting to see seedlings pop up. So I will have, hopefully, at least 128 cells of scented stock, but I was planning on 400 or 500. So that's disappointing. I don't really think I have time to get any more seed ordered and get it started. I plant it in my hoop house and it just gets too warm too quickly here. So we're gonna pivot and we'll just do less stock this year. And then I don't have any more of the Japanese sweet peas, but I did have some of the coral peach, the other variety that I started. I didn't have a lot of them, but I went ahead and put them in a damp paper towel to get them pre-sprouting. I do have some mammoth sweet peas and I haven't quite decided. I think we'll see what the ones that were damaged look like. I could start those as well. They grow pretty quick and I can provide them with a little bit of shade that I think they will be okay. They don't take as long to mature either, as scented stock can take up to 120 days. So I think I'm just kind of a little bit late for that one at this point, but we're gonna give the sweet peas another go. And then just to kind of round out and apply what I said earlier to this situation, if I had decided scented stock was my filler, it was going to be the only thing I used in these early mixed market bouquets, I would be panicking. While I am pretty disappointed, I have a lot of perennials that bloom pretty early. A lot of those are spike flowers, so they can take the place of the scented stock. We also direct sowed some things out in my small hoop house together a few weeks back. I'm hopeful that some of those can kind of fill the gap. We have like some flowering bushes, like I haven't used lilac much. We have a crab apple that I use sometimes. So I think I can get pretty creative, and not having much scented stock isn't gonna put too much of a dent in my market bouquets for the spring or the very early summer. The side of things that will suffer is I grow a lot of that scented stock for a florist. She loves it. I'm gonna have to tell her that I'm not gonna have much this year for her. I'm sure she can source it somewhere else, but that's sort of a bummer. So let's get bundled up and head out to the shop. Now today it isn't much better. We got down to negative 10 or 12 again last night, but I think this was our last extremely cold night. And then looking at the 10-day, we're gonna be in the 40s. Our temperature swings are so crazy. I know some of you out there are seeing similar things. So I think going forward we'll probably be okay temperature-wise, but I think as a takeaway for myself, this was the first year we had used the shop this early in the season. We didn't have it ready to go until probably almost April last year. So I did have plants growing out there, but not as early as February. So I think in future years, I'm gonna have to be careful as far as how quickly I move things from the house out to that less heated space. So let's bundle up, let's go out, and we'll just check the condition of things today. Okay, let me show you the sadness. First off, right at 50, so I almost wonder if we had a power outage for it to get that low. They don't look any better today. Actually, through the camera, they look more green than they do in person. So this is the one stock tray. That isn't for sure a goner, but yeah, they just, I don't know if they'll bounce back and make really nice plants. And the sweet peas look a little bit worse than they did yesterday, actually. So I think we're probably gonna call that a loss. One thing I didn't talk about was the zonal geraniums. I don't know if I killed all of those. And I didn't mention the tulips either, mostly because I didn't know. Now they were darker green, like this one's very floppy. I think that one is not good. Some of these feel okay. This one is like wilty, so I don't think that one's gonna produce. I think they probably did have a light freeze, some of them. Most of them feel pretty stiff though. I did switch out their water, just give them fresh water and kind of hopefully a new start, but you can see, I can almost kind of pick out which ones are a little bit wimpy. Those two both don't look good. We'll give them a few more days and then I'll probably clean up the ones and just kind of take out the ones that I don't think are gonna make it. And then not to keep showing you our gross floor, but these are 2 of the 3 trays that didn't make it. I know they look green on camera, but off camera they're just, I think they're goners. I mean, maybe some of them would push back, but I think they were just so small. That I don't think I'm gonna bother. Now, good news is I did panic because these tulips were out here as well, the bulk of my tulips. So I got those planted and I actually need to bring out some paper bags. I just put 2 of them across it to block out the light for the first couple weeks while they're putting on their roots, and that seems to work pretty well. And some of these, I was questioning too, the bulbs, because they felt a little smushier than they should. It was mostly this grouping, but we're definitely gonna see how they do. So save yourself a hard lesson and learn from me. Watch those plants when your temperatures dip. Now I do have a Govee thermometer that will show me the temperature on my phone. And I would have definitely used that had I thought this area was gonna vary in temperature as much as it did. I have used the Govee down in my hoop houses before, and it's really nice to be able to just look at your phone, even if you're still in bed in the morning, and see what temperature it is out in your hoop houses. So I definitely could have used that out here and maybe save myself some heartache. But we will go on. I have a plan for the spring and for going forward. I still think I will have plenty of beautiful flowers, even if I don't have much stock or sweet peas this year. One thing that I just happened to see on social media last night after I was up here trying to clean up the dead madness was one other grower had a picture of one of her trays that looked a lot like my dead one. And she said, oh, first casualties of 2025 with like a little laughing emoji. She's a pretty experienced grower and has a lot of followers. That made me feel better that I'm not alone in this and everyone will see some setbacks throughout their season. Let me know of a challenge or an obstacle that you've faced recently and how you overcame it in the comments below.